What's going on, you guys? This is the NCU podcast. I am your host, Noel, back at it again with another NCU reviews. And today we are going to be talking about the most latest release of the Flash movie. But before we get into this, please, if you guys don't mind, hitting that like button, sharing it with your friends, and subscribing to the page. And also turn on that notification bell. Without further ado, let's get into it. Now, I'm not going to try to make this episode too long. By the way, before I actually get into the juicy details of everything, be warned that this video will contain spoilers. Remember, this video will contain spoilers. If you want to see the movie before listening to this, that's fine. If you don't care and you're saying, I just want to hear, what Noel has to say, I appreciate it. I appreciate you for staying, but be warned that this video does contain spoilers. You have been warned. Now, just like my last video with the Transformers, also, I would like to say thank you all to my fans who have actually stayed and subscribed. Thank you for constantly watching my content. Thank you for constantly sharing it, liking the videos as well. I'm gonna try to do more of these. But just like I did with the Transformers video, I'm gonna talk about the good, the bad, and guess the ugly. But that's gonna be kind of how I'm starting to break down these reviews. More so because I don't want it to be a situation where I'm sitting back and I'm basically explaining the whole movie to you all, like I think I did with the Spider-Man video. So that way, also, with it being shorter, it lets people actually figure out more if they want to go see this movie or not. So, without further ado, let's get into the good. So, for starters, visual effect wise, I would totally say that this movie was a hit. Like, watching Barry run, as in seeing how time was slowed, even though they did a lot of color changing whenever he was actually supposed to be moving fast and everything else around him slow. It was good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Not necessarily the biggest fan of the lightning constantly coming off of him. That's probably more so coming from watching, the old TV shows and just not seeing a bunch of just strong lightning bolts coming off. But nevertheless, I would say the visual effects were good, especially when it came to the action and the fighting. I also enjoyed the fact that they decided to give the Flash more than just run fast, punch, run fast, kick. Like, they actually, whoever actually wrote the script per se, which I'm gonna talk about later. They actually sat there and did a little bit of their homework when it comes to actually looking at the Flash's powers. Like, he was able to use a cyclone attack. They actually showed him phasing, and also, especially getting to the visual effects. I also enjoyed the fact that once he actually learned and he did phase through the wall, we did like an up close, like a real deep, like microscopic up close, and you seen how his molecules and everything were literally vibrating to be able to actually pass through solid objects. It's very cool. One other big hit that I thoroughly liked and I thoroughly enjoyed, which of course a lot of people are going to this movie to see, is Michael Keaton's Batman. Like, from when we meet him, he seems really, out of it because he's a Batman that, by the way, also, he is Bruce Wayne. He's a Bruce Wayne Batman. He's not Thomas Wayne, like how the Flashpoint is set up, like in actual comics and the animated movie. Nevertheless, he is Bruce Wayne. We see that basically Gotham City is safe. Gotham City is thriving, flourishing, and there's nothing wrong. So he's retired, but seeing Barry, seeing that he's from a different timeline and wanting to help, he decides to throw the cape back on. And by golly, this man hit a lot of nostalgia points. I enjoyed Michael Keaton's Batman in this movie for the sake of him actually kind of not only being a Batman that, just fights and does a lot of his gliding, but at the same time, I enjoyed the fact that he was more of a gadget man in this. Like, it kind of had that comedy, that minor comedy where it's like he could sit there, he could just pull out a gadget for anything. Like, 1 minute they're trying to get up an elevator and he decides to actually blow the bottom up so it could shoot them up faster. So what he ends up doing is literally pulling out a tape measure to see how far it is off the ground, then trying to calibrate the bomb based off of everybody's weight just so that it can actually push them to the top with no issues and without killing them. Found that hilarious, found that very, very old school, and I was like, I enjoy this. Um I think for the most part that's where the goods kind of end. And I say that because most of what I'm gonna say in the bad I can say it has nothing to do with just Ezra Miller. And when I say that, I'm more so saying I'm not going based off of everything that's going on with him, legally in the court system, the things that they say he's done in the news. I'm not touching on that. That's not why I'm going to basically really go in on this movie. But this is more so coming from a person who enjoyed the comic book, who also enjoyed the animated version of this movie, and the things that I felt like really, really missed. So, for starters, I'm going to talk about one really, really weird nitpick. I just hate how they made Ezra Miller Flash run. Like, he's not necessarily trying to just run like how a runner does. And this is coming from somebody also in high school. I ran track. He's not arm forward, like left arm forward, right leg forward, and then constantly going in that motion. He's kind of just swinging his arms around. It makes him look kind of goofy, like really, really goofy. And also, it doesn't make him seem like he's running fast at all. Like the way that DC shot the Flash when it came to him running was more so based off of he's moving, and basically he's moving in normal speed, or he's looking like he's kind of moving at normal speed, but with everything else is just slowed. And I say that they've dropped the ball on this because they in X-Men like Apocalypse, they showed a really good Quicksilver. They showed that you can have a character that's supposed to move very, very fast without it looking bad. And in this one, it just didn't look good. Like in the battle scenes, yes, it was cool. Like you didn't really see him actually doing his movements. You just seen the trail of lightning, and you seen him just, hitting and dodging things. So that was fine. But just like if he was just doing his normal runs just to get from point A to point B, he just it just did not look believable. Now, did I need them to have him do, Speedy Gonzalez quick feet? No, not necessarily, but he just the way that they shot it, he did not look like he was moving fast at all, and it just looked weird. Another problem that I had with Ezra Miller's Flash is that he just seemed like really, really out of his element. And when I say out of his element, I mean the Flash, yes, he has his goofy moments, comic book wise and everything. He's a little more lighthearted, especially when you look at the makeup of the Justice League. But nevertheless, in this, he seemed like very, very inexperienced. Like this man is working with the cops, and I forget his actual occupation. I want to say he's a detective or whatnot. I already know for all the other nerds that are going to comment, they're probably going to crucify me. Sorry, I have not kept up on the Flash. I know, of course, his basic origin. I just always kind of forget his actual job. Nevertheless, instead of him, we see in this like more smart type of Barry Allen. We see one that's basically an intern. Like, he's late to work, even though he is the fastest man alive. He's literally going to grab the boss coffee. He doesn't know how to solve it. Well, he's trying to figure out how to solve these cases. And I can say that, yeah, they went with a more emotional route, but nevertheless, he just really, really seemed like too young. And it made it even to the point where it seemed like, per se, they kind of went with the Tom Holland Spider-Man, more so the Civil War version. Like, this Ezra Miller Flash, this Barry Allen's Flash, is more so the kid, the new kid on the block, and he's the kid that supposed to be goofy and this and that, instead of like an actual serious member that people really look forward to and looking like, okay, he can do all these things. So I had a problem with that. Another Flashpoint problem I had was that the whole Flashpoint story is basically based on Barry going back in time, saving his mother, coming back to his timeline, and everything just being completely different. Instead, Barry got knocked out of his actual his speed run by another speedster who I will talk about later, and now he's in a branching timeline because they kind of went with the whole no matter what happens, timeline. They kind of went with the Avengers Endgame type aspect. You think because if you change something in the past, it's going to affect your future. When in reality, if you change something in the past, it's just going to make a branching future. So that's kind of what they went with that. And they ended up having two Barry Allens, and both of them did not work well together. And I know there's like you have the more serious veteran Flash versus the new upcoming Flash is a little goofier, but nevertheless it just didn't work. Like, the goofier younger Barry Allen seemed just so annoying at times and just so lazy. Like, because he saved his mother, all of a sudden he just basically became the kid that is in college and smoking weed. He didn't smoke weed in there, but I'm giving a visual context. The one that parents usually worry about. He's gonna play the game all day, he's gonna rely on his parents, and he's not really gonna do anything for himself. It's kind of frustrating. Versus the veteran Barry Allen, who's trying to teach him, even though it's not working, but also he's not necessarily knowing how to actually talk to his own self. He's just kind of being a jerk at times. He's trying to be a little serious at times. And it was just, overall, their dichotomy just did not work for me. And I was frustrated, per se, with that. Getting through the rest of the movie, this movie was also definitely a cameo fest. And when I say a cameo fest, I mean the cameos that they made frustrated me because of the actual story. One of the major things that happened in the Flashpoint story, not the live action movie, the Flashpoint story, is that we have Thomas Wayne Batman, which is the father of Bruce Wayne. We have Aquaman and Wonder Woman at war, Atlanteans versus Amazons. Yet and still, we have Wonder Woman show up in the movie to save Batman, like before Barry went back in time. And then we also had Jason Momoa, Aquaman, pop up at the end, just basically being drunk. And the thing about that is, I'm all for superhero cameos. Shoot, I've pitched to my friends multiple times that if they aren't gonna make any more Deadpool movies after Deadpool 3, and they don't want to just use him in the X-Men, I feel like he should play more of a Stan Lee role, because Deadpool is supposed to be funny, he's supposed to break the fourth wall. So he should more so just randomly, if you have Doctor Strange fighting Dormammu and he's randomly thrown into a Home Depot, you see Deadpool carrying a block of wood saying, "Are you okay?" And then Doctor Strange leaves, And then Deadpool looks at the camera and says, "Oh, I would help him, but obviously the budget didn't allow for me to be in this movie, so maybe next time." And then leaving. Something a little funny. You don't have to repeat that all the time, but things like that. But and he said, I'm okay with just heroes popping in, popping out. Doesn't really bother me that much, especially because in these superhero worlds, a lot of these characters live relatively close, or they're usually around the same area. My problem is that you had Aquaman in the movie, even if it was for end credit scene. You had Wonder Woman in the movie, which it was supposed to be just to help save Ben Affleck's Batman. But the problem with the whole situation of it is, if the actual comic book and animated story focused on Aquaman and Wonder Woman having this war like during this alternate timeline, then why not even have them in the movie? Like, actually, why not continue to go with that? Like, I really have a problem with certain things not following source materials. And I'm not gatekeep. I'm not saying that it has to just 100% follow that line. If I did believe that, then obviously, and this is true, Avengers Infinity War and Endgame wouldn't have been as memorable as they are, because Thanos wouldn't have been there trying to correct and balance the universe. Thanos would have been there because he was trying to get some booty. That's the only reason he wanted the Infinity Stones, because he wanted to be with Mistress Death instead of actually balancing the universe. So I understand like changing certain things up, but the way that this movie was situated, a lot of it seemed like they just kind of threw things out the wall. They kind of took things out. And it's also more so a problem, especially if it's a situation where you have an animated blueprint movie of this that literally is beloved by a lot of fans, and then you just kind of butcher it. Like, it makes no sense. And that was a very, very major frustrating part with me. There's other parts that I'm gonna mention. You end up finding out at the end that the speedster that knocked out Barry and put him into the Michael Keaton timeline is basically the newer, younger Barry that you end up meeting, mostly because he's trying to save Supergirl, who ends up dying to General Zod. He's trying to save her, and he's constantly going back in time and back in time and back in time. And it is a heartfelt moment saying, hey, you got to learn how to let the past go. You got to learn that you can't just save everybody. Barry's not trying to hear that. And then he ends up basically staying stuck in the Speed Force, and to the point where he's becoming old and just mentally out of it. And that's what ends up happening. CGI was also hit or miss, especially this is the reason why I said they shouldn't have went the two Barry Allens, because you'd have Ezra Miller standing there as his younger self, and then his older self is like CGI'd face. It just had so many weird moments. It didn't look great at all. Also seeing that, I guess a problem that I also had, even though I enjoy Michael Keaton's Batman and Ben Affleck's Batman was cool too, they definitely made them meta-humans. And I say that more so in a way of, especially Ben Affleck's Batman, which you see in the beginning of the movie, he was literally getting dragged around on a highway, like grappling hooked to a truck, getting dragged on a highway, hitting cars and everything, and he had no damage. Like, he wasn't sitting there looking like he was in pain. He wasn't groaning. He was just hitting walls, hitting cars, hitting trucks. Then he eventually climbed up, and I'm like, come on now. You can't say that he's just surviving this. And it kind of puts in that narrative of like, Batman is so popular that people kind of forget who Batman is. Like, no matter what, Batman is still human. He's just a peak version of what humans can be. And it's like, Okay, cool, whatever. Like that happened. Um, Supergirl, she was okay. She definitely, I guess, to progress the plot and progress the story, they basically had Supergirl sit there and learn her powers immediately without actually training. And I feel like that was kind of a problem. Me and my friend discussed this. Well, me and my friend Levert discussed this. He was on the podcast when we had the superhero battle royale episode. You should also check that one out if you haven't. It's one of my best videos, and I feel really, really deep with that video. That a lot of nerd knowledge came out with that. But nevertheless, it's a situation where it's supposed to be implied without them actually saying that when Kara Zor-El, Supergirl, when her pod landed on Earth and I guess, and the Russians got to her, basically she at some point was fighting them, and she learned how to use some of her powers until they ended up finding out that she can't, be super under red solar energy, and then they locked her up, but they don't actually really hint at it. You have to really kind of think deeply on that, and that's something I thought of, even though it wasn't necessarily explicitly said, or it wasn't even 100% implied. It was just the only thing that made sense for her to actually learn how to use her powers immediately, other than just to progress the plot. Um, and also, like I said before, with the cameos, like they were explaining that Barry was, crushing the timelines, and he was messing up the universe. We've seen a really, really lot of also random cameos. Ones that I wasn't mad at, but ones I was very shocked at. So this isn't a bad situation. We've seen the first ever Flash, the first ever iteration of Flash CGI'd. Seen him running around. He's wondering what's going on. We've seen the first live action Superman, which I was even more surprised at. And speaking of Superman, I know this actor has been asking to be in the cape for so long, and he finally got it. We saw a Nicolas Cage Superman fighting a giant spider. Didn't expect that. Threw me completely off. But nevertheless, I still sat back and was like, okay, that's cool. I'm digging that, until eventually Barry had to go back and stop himself from saving his mother. But nevertheless, the movie ended bad. And I know they're like, well, how do you end bad? He didn't save his mother. Yeah, that's sad, but everything's fixed. He didn't, though. He literally went back in time, stopped his past self, because the whole reason why his mother died, movie wise, is because she said, or the reason why everything is bad so far, movie wise, is because she was supposed to be cooking for Barry and his father. She asked his father, can he go pick up some more tomatoes from the store? Once he gets back from the store, he sees his wife is dead, and the cops blame Barry's father, and he's trying to solve that case. And the reason why the Flashpoint paradox in the movie happened is because he went back in time, because he didn't want to cause a butterfly effect by telling somebody to grab tomatoes. So what all he did was just that he went back in time, like in super speed. He grabbed the tomatoes, put them in the basket, and then ran off. So he went back in time, stopped himself from doing that, had a heartfelt moment with his mom, and then after that, he still basically had it to where his dad was innocent. Because the reason why his dad was still in jail is because in the camera footage that was in that grocery store, that Barry kept saying, no, my dad was there, my dad was there. There's no evidence of it. So his dad is still in jail. So instead of him sitting there and just letting things play out so the world can be back normal, he ended up putting the tomatoes above his father, where his father was going to stand above his head. So that way his father would look up, and on the grocery store camera, you see, oh, his father was there. So obviously he's, innocent. And all that ended up doing was still putting Barry in a completely new timeline. And I feel like personally, that's the only satisfying ending we could have gotten. And I know you're like, well, what do you mean? You've been ragging it. Why would that be a satisfying ending? I'm saying because James Gunn is going to be taking over the DC live action universe. If you're going to completely reboot and recast these characters, you can't have it where Barry is still, in your main continuity universe. I don't know how many people are going to actually be recasted. I don't know how many people are still staying with their roles. But nevertheless, from how the movie ended, no end credit scene, we basically see that Barry is in a completely new universe. And how do we know this? Because when he's talking to Bruce Wayne on the phone and Bruce Wayne says, "I'm pulling up on you," who walks out the car? George Clooney. Another very random cameo, but I said, sure, why not? Also, last point to get on when I was talking about Barry being timid, his whole relationship with Iris was just a very, very bad plot point. Like, he couldn't even ask her out on a date. And I'm not saying it's supposed to have a love connection story, but he just seemed like he just couldn't do anything right, and they tried to play that by making it full of cheap laughs. But again, it wasn't funny. This movie was disappointing. And considering the controversy that surrounded the movie and, of course, Ezra Miller, I did not have high hopes for this movie. But I thought, maybe something good could come out of it. And it just ended up being disappointing. Like I say this, only go see this movie if you are just a diehard Michael Keaton fan. But if you're not, this movie is just a miss. It is very, very mid-tier. I would say if you are that much inclined to go see the movie, wait until you can see it on a $5 Tuesday, or just wait until it gets on HBO Max, because I know they have a contract and partnership with DC. Just wait for it to be then. But just like how the rest of, well, not the rest of, but a good majority of the live action films have been, I guess this was the final nail in the coffin to finally get rid of this version of the DC universe. And hopefully, James Gunn can actually put a spin on DC, especially with it starting off with Blue Beetle. And I've always been a very, very diehard DC fan. I've been a DC fan before I was a Marvel fan. And I just hope that going forward, that these movies are actually quality, rather than just looking at these beloved characters and thinking, how can we get a buck? Because all they're doing is just all they did was just use the most famous stories and butcher them. So James Gunn, if you somehow ever run across this video, please be like this S logo on Superman's chest, and please give us hope. But without further ado, that is the end of this video. Hope you guys enjoy. Please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell and share with your friends. Let me know if you're gonna go see the movie. Let me know if there's any other movies that you want me to review. Personally, I think other than Blue Beetle and the Marvels, I might do TMNT, but there aren't that many hero movies or nerd movies that are out and being released. So I might actually start doing, a deeper dive on some of the older movies, like the Tobey Maguire Spider-Mans. I might get into the Michael Keaton Batman movie, might see the original Superman movie, and probably review some of the animated movies as well. Let me know if that's something you guys would be interested in. But again, thank you all for listening. I hope you all enjoyed. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you all on the next one.